Yo, what's good, E7 fam? Pat here, back with the August 4th balance adjustment preview. If you've already seen how I do balance adjustment previews in the past, welcome back. Love to have you here. If you are new here, please consider leaving me a like or subscribe. Helps out a ton. What makes my balance adjustment previews a little bit different than some other content creators is before we actually take a look at the buffs, I try to explain why the character might need buffs in the first place, so we kind of have a framework and understanding of why the character isn't good and why they would need buffs in the first place. So then when we actually take a look at the buffs, we can kind of compare and contrast and see if it's actually a successful buff. Do stay tuned for the end of the video. I will be doing a giveaway at the end of the video, so once I'm done talking about it, don't immediately switch off. Please, that's really, really important. We broke a milestone recently of 4,000 subscribers, so I do want to give back to everybody for all the love and support you guys have shown me. So yeah, again, stay tuned at the end of the video for that giveaway. Now let's talk about the balance adjustment targets. We're going to be talking about Faithless Litica, Holiday Euphine, Ervalin, Senya, Great Chief Kawana, Captain Rickerus, Yunryong, ROL, and the two artifacts, Alensinox's Wrath, as well as Double-Edged Decrescent. Jumping right into it, Faithless Litica. So this was a character that used to be one of the game's premier speed contesters, one of the best openers in the game. She has 114 base speed, which is not good enough by today's standards. Pretty much the best slash slowest turn one contester right now is Conqueror Lilius, which is in the low 120 range. A lot of the openers are either in the high 120s or the low 120s, so 114 really just doesn't cut it. So obviously this character just needs to be faster. And if we're not going to make her faster, then she's going to need a new niche, because her entire kit just screams, I need to take turn one. I need to be an opener. She is a Dispeller. Those characters traditionally have to take the very first turn, or they have to have, some kind of exceptional bulk stats or some kind of exceptional way to survive. Like a character like, say, Angel of Light, Angelica can get away with being a little bit slower because of things like her S2 passive, as well as being a mage, which has high defense. Faithless Litica can't actually do that, so she has no actual niche outside of being that I have a glass cannon, I must take turn one opener. So let's actually take a look at what she got. So we increased the damage on her S2 Larkspur, and they have made it so that if you land a critical hit, it will dispel one additional buff. Most Faithless Liticas are built with a critical hit chance necklace, as far as I'm aware. So they basically are just straight up going to be getting the extra dispel one debuff, or I'm sorry, one buff on the enemy team. So I guess that is a positive, but it doesn't fix any of the issues. They've also relocated this 5% combat readiness per target hit on Larkspur to a flat 25% combat readiness increase to all allies on her S3 Hysteria. Yeah, so these are both buffs, but none of these buffs actually address any of the issues that the character has. So sure, she does more damage. Sure, she is a better opener when she actually can open. And sure, if you reset the cooldown, you technically are getting more combat readiness than you used to with the old Larkspur into Hysteria combo, but it doesn't really do enough, right? I don't really think this changes anything. I don't think Flitica will actually see any more play. So yeah, this one, it's going to be a no for me. I personally don't think it's that good. If I'm wrong or I missed anything, then as always, let me know down in the comments below. Now let's talk about Holiday Euphine. So Holiday Euphine has already received one round of buffs, and she was a bit better after the buffs. You have players like Elfmage who had some success with her before we got the Slime collab. I remember he actually was playing her, and she was doing fairly well. But since we got the Slime collab last fall, power creep has been really serious with characters like Ran, Pera, Conqueror Lilius. So we're just not in that meta anymore. Characters at like Holiday Euphine's power level just aren't good enough anymore. Like Luna was very good when Holiday Euphine was considered a decent pick, and Luna is basically unplayable in World Arena right now. So that shows you how far power creep has come in the last 9 months or so. So what Holiday Euphine really needs, the core thing that she's always needed, is she needed to not get punished for being an AoE only character. And, she needed to have some kind of damage increase, maybe to make her a more viable damage dealer. And then finally, because she is technically a cleanser, and we are in a post-hand guy world, cleansers feel like they need to just do more than cleanse debuffs. Yes, she is a damage dealer on top of that, but you really feel like you need more out of the character now more than ever. So they have increased the damage on just one bite, which we'll wait to see the damage multipliers on this, but this is going to need to be a lot for it to be considered an actual buff to her damage because of the way that they changed Euphine special, and we'll talk about that in a second. So her S2 passive, Let's Eat Together, it used to give 50%, I believe, evasion at the start when she had full health, and then she always had a flat 20% evasion as well. So she's always had the evasion at full health ever since she came out, but they gave her 20% flat evasion to kind of help her have some form of survivability. They have now split that in half. You get still 70 evasion at full health, but you get 35 at full health, and you have 35 always. And that seems really good on paper, but dodge units have been in a decline for a while now. We have received a lot of characters that are reasonably decent against dodge characters. You have a character like Shadow Knight Phyllis that's very good against evasion characters, and that is a commonly played character in high-end World Arena right now. So the evasion meta is kind of like slowly fading away. You don't really see Violet anywhere near as much as you used to. Last fall when we were in Casino meta, dodge was really in. Remember, Holiday Euphine was kind of decent in that meta because when Luna was good, dodge and Casino was meta. Dodge is not really so much meta now, so this is kind of like a nice quality of life improvement, but I don't really think it changed anything because the total, like the totality of the evasion here, like is still 70%, and that wasn't enough to begin with, so I don't really see how this helps here now. The final change here is we've changed Euphine special. Instead of giving a greater attack buff to Euphine for 2 turns after using her cleanse, her S3, you also now get an attack buff for all allies for 2 turns. Now this can go one of 2 ways. Attack buff, as I always say, is one of the best buffs in the entire game. It's really good to have a cleanser that also gives attack buff. This would put you like kinda on par with Hand Guy, right? You will essentially give that attack buff as well as a cleanse. It might not be as good, but it's still pretty decent. But overall, it still hurts the damage on the character because this is a character that was using burns on things like just one bite. And now that you've gotten rid of the greater attack buff, the overall damage on the character is actually less. Like, so even though we've increased the damage on just one bite, unless you massively have increased that damage, then overall the damage on the character is down. And one of the things that made Holiday Euphine at least somewhat playable was she was a very aggressive cleanser that could also double as a carry. If she loses that carry functionality, then why should I choose her over Hand Guy? Or why should I choose her over Designer Lilibet, right? Because Designer Lilibet is an aggressive cleanser, and she's probably going to end up having more damage at the end of the day than a character like Holiday Euphine. So we'll wait to see on this one. I could be wrong. I don't really think this is going to change the playability, but because it is technically a cleanser and it is a combat readiness pusher and it also gives attack buff to the entire team, there's a possibility. Because anytime you have a character that's like this, where it's a CR push plus an attack buff for the whole team plus a dispel, sure, like there could be a really fast Holiday Euphine build that makes her like a Closer Charles that I'm not thinking of. That might be a real possibility. Like we might see like a 270 speed Holiday Euphine that just throws everything away just to try and get as much speed and kind of be that aggressive like backup Closer Charles, like how we talked about on how to play Operator Cigarette, how like a very fast Operator Cigarette could kind of like double as a second copy of Closer Charles. You could use Holiday Euphine like that now with these changes. And I think, honestly, that's probably the best way to go about it, because if you're trying to play her the same way that everyone's been doing for a while, again, I just don't think these buffs cut it. Now let's talk about Urvalin, which is a character, admittedly, I have never played, and I have never really seen anybody play. So my knowledge of Urvalin only comes from things I've seen on, like, social media posts in the official Epic 7 Discord when I've been in there, and then just like YouTube videos from other content creators that I enjoy. If I had to make a list on what Urvalin needs, he needs to be more usable in PvP because he has a fairly good defined niche, which is he is a great Banshee one-shot option for players that miss the ReZero collab and don't have Ram, and obviously for those who missed the Guilty Gear collab and do not have Biken. The problem with that is even though he's a great Banshee one-shot option, there is a 2-star green mouse that actually can do the same job as the Arvalan. So I really think he needed to be able to be used in PvP in some capacity, because his best use case scenario in PvE is comparable to a 2-star. So when your 5-star at best is matching a 2-star in your game, that's a problem. So let's take a look at what he got. Vengeance, which I believe is his S1, was now the ability that received the soul burn for 10 souls. You essentially get a 100% chance to decrease the target's defense for 2 turns. If you were trying to shift him into a PvP category, then maybe this would be pretty good. But somebody who's sticking with just PvE, which, spoiler alert, it seems to be how he's going to be, I don't really think this does anything. Now we move on to Sword of Hatred. I believe this is the move where he like pokes you with the sword a ton of times. Yeah, it looks like it attacks the enemy repeatedly. So they got rid of the thing that makes this move have its identity. It gets more damage based on the difference between himself as well as the target that he's hitting. And instead it now gives you a 2-turn attack buff. And then if you attack an elite or boss monster, you get an extra turn. But the damage was decreased and the cooldown was bumped to 4 turns. So if you gave it an extra turn at 3 turns, it would leave it at the same level of usability. And yes, I know they did change the AI so that the S2 is now prioritized first to kind of help him with that Banshee one-shot, which was kind of, again, like the only PvE identity he really had. Maybe he might be decent with this change in something like Blooming Snag Lich, but I don't really see it because Biken and Ram are already really good there, and they're the primary characters that people already use over him in Banshee, so he's got the same competition. Yeah, I don't really see how this does anything. Anytime I see damage dealt decreased, you're pigeonholing the character. You really, with this change, it looks like you're really pigeonholing him into Banshee, and that's really going away from what he needed. You want to be expanding what characters can do to give players more possibilities, more things they can do with their favorite characters. People want to play characters that they like. Like, if there were people out there that played Arvalan, they really like Arvalan. Like, even though the vast majority of people weren't playing Arvalan, you shouldn't take away, I think, the things that made Arvalan good for the players that did enjoy them. If you were going to do a rework, I think you should have done something a little bit more thoughtful and less... again, linear, less lazy, I guess, because this is a very, like, we pigeonholed you change to Sword of Hatred. So now let's talk about his S3, Heir to the Throne. Instead of adopting a counter-attacking stance, he gets a speed buff for 2 turns. And they got rid of the soul burn on it, and they also lowered the damage. Yeah. This is not a good set of buffs. This is not a good rework. I don't honestly know what it actually even does, because the character, again, already could one-shot Banshee. You didn't need to really help him here and make him, like, more streamlined to kill Banshee. Like, you could have done that by, like, increasing his damage. Like, if you wanted to make him a better, Banshee character, you could have added more utility to the kit that helps him in other game modes, and then also just, like, amped his damage. You could have made the damage higher. That would have worked too, because then it lowers the gear threshold to actually play the character in Banshee. Yeah, this is a really big miss. Like, my quick 2 minutes perusing around the internet seems to be that people really hate this change to Arvalan, and I don't blame them. This feels like a really lazy rework, and it doesn't really feel like it changes anything. If I'm wrong, let me know down in the comments below. Maybe there's some other content creator out there, somebody like a Tristan Wolf who specializes in making various different hunts or like PvE style content. Maybe Arvalan's like really good in Hall of Trials or something, and I just don't know it. So yeah, again, let me know. But this feels like a swing and a miss. Next up is one of my favorite characters from the past year, Senya. So Senya needed to have Grace of the Battlefield be less RNG reliant. Ideally, we'd like her to be a little bit more durable so she can survive easier against aggressive compositions, because she's usually classified as like an anti-cleave, anti-aggro character, but you don't really see too many people picking her. because outside of like Ricazzo, because again, it's not the most reliable. So if we can get more durability, more reliability out of the character so that she can survive easier, I think you'll see people more than happily pick her up. And then also, I would like it so that if the counter buff on Dragon Slayer's Strike actually wasn't so easily dealt with, because you can just Dragon Slayer's Strike and then like Handguy S2s it, and you're like, man, I feel like I got no value out of my move aside from the fact that it was an AoE. So let's see what she actually got. So they changed Grace of the Battlefield, already a good start. Instead of giving one random buff to all allies, it now grants a barrier to all allies for 2 turns, including herself, and increases Sanya's speed for 2 turns. Barrier strength increases proportional to the caster's attack. We really need to see the multipliers on this, but Sanya has a really high attack score. Like most Sanyas, if you've watched like how to play Sanya on this channel, I always talk about having over 6,000 attack. That's pretty big compared to most other characters in the game. There's very few characters in the game that are going to have more than 6,000 health. Like only Hua Young realistically is going to outscale you on attack. Everyone else is going to be similar. Like a Ram is going to be a similar level of attack or less most of the time. So I expect a really fat barrier, unless they do what they always do with this character, which is they just assume you have 6,000 something attack, and then they like, yeah, that's an average barrier if you have like the maximum what most people play. So we will see. Speed buff, I think, is really huge. It's a double-edged sword in the fact that it lowers the uptime on the counter attacking stance buff that you get from Dragon Slayer's Strike. But I think it's worth it because you get to your first turn faster, so you can use Dragon Slayer's Strike, because you almost always are trailing Grace of the Battlefield like on your opponent's first turn before Sanya actually ever gets to her first turn. So I really like this change. This is a really, really great change to Indomitable Spirit and Grace of the Battlefield. Next up is Dragon Slayer's Strike. Let's read only the Awakened one. It now has an 85% chance to provoke all enemies for 1 turn when you use it, and the counterattacking stances for 3 turns. So we didn't get the counter stance buff change that we were looking for, but we did get a buff, so that's still a positive. And this 85% chance to provoke is really good, because there are a lot of times where you want to use the S1 on the character to provoke rather than Dragon Slayer's Strike, because you need their provoke. So it felt really bad to choose between having to provoke a character and using your ultimate when it was available. So now your ultimate being a provoke is a huge, huge change. I really like these changes overall to Sanya. I think that she's probably the best character that got buffs this patch. Like, I think she's the clear winner of this patch in terms of characters for sure. She also had her exclusive equipment changed. I want to talk about the third one first because it's the easier one, and it's that she gets the 2-turn greater attack buff on Dragon Slayer's Strike is now changed to 3 turns to kind of, coincide with the fact that the counterattack stance now takes 3 turns. I personally don't like the third exclusive equipment, but it is player preference, and it's still a very good EE, and obviously this brings it more in line with the new changes. So this is still going to be an excellent option. But the second one here, making it so Grace of the Battlefield's barrier strength is increased by 20%. If these barriers are fat here based on the multipliers, and then you get 20% extra here, whoo, man, that's super good. That means that every single exclusive equipment on Sanya is a banger. And this character is going to have a lot of build like diversity, and you'll see players that you can really kind of see what they favor. Like, I favor sustain, so I go for lifesteal. One of my guildmates really favors big damage, so he goes for the greater attack one. You might find players who really like playing Protect the Queen style comps. They might go for Grace of the Battlefield barrier strength. And again, so it's like 3 completely different play styles, like a protector, a sustained damage dealer, or like a more of a glass cannon, like hyper DPS style character. So this is a really, again, good set of changes. Sanya has gotten really, really good changes, I think, in this patch. So let's talk about Great Chief Kawana. So when we take a look at what she needs to do something, literally anything, I feel like, other than Katie's at this point, because if we are going to stick with Katie's, then she needs to be more useful than a character like Commander Lorena, or a character of similar rarity like Watcher Shuri, because Commander Lorena, anyone has access to her, and Commander Lorena has proven she's one of the best, if not the best, damage dealer for Katie's. And Watcher Shuri is, again, a unit of comparable rarity for Katie's, and is better in a whole host of different style of Katie's compositions, whether that is a standard or a one-shot. He's just better. So she needs to do literally anything, I feel like, other than Katie's at this point. So what we got is now, instead of her buff stacking 5 times for 15%, it now stacks 3 times for 25%. So she ramps up quicker in Katie's. But the problem is that Commander Lorena is still going to outdamage you, is still going to ramp up at a comparable level to you. So like you're competing with Commander Lorena, who is literally like the best standard / one shot Katie's one shot composition character, and she's free for everyone because she's a connection hero. So this doesn't do anything, and we didn't get any other buffs. So this is again just a hard fail. I feel like a lot of characters in this patch just aren't really that good. The changes just don't really make any sense, or they don't really feel like they improved the use cases for a lot of characters. The biggest question mark, I think, of this patch is going to be Captain Rickarus, who we're going to talk about next. Yeah, this one, I'm not really sure. Even if you reverted his original set of nerfs back when he was part of what they called the Holy Trinity, I don't know if that would be enough to save him. His S2 used to be 1 turn less cooldown, and it also used to heal allies with continuous healing buff. So he used to be like a really good support because he could help you cycle through cooldowns faster on your team and also heal you, which is really, really nice. Kind of think of him like a different version of like Tamarin before we had Tamarin, because like Tamarin speeds you up to get the extra cooldowns reduced faster, and she would give you a bunch of support and healing. So he was like one of the best, if not the best support in the game. And then they kind of nerfed his S2, and it just never really recovered. Like Cheer was pretty much the whole character. So they either need to make Cheer like on par with other buffs these days, make it a really powerful and impactful buff, or they just need to give him a new niche or a role. So what they did now is the S3 Supreme Spear, instead of having a 3-turn cooldown and it could stun 1 character on the enemy team, as well as be a strip for 1 buff on the enemy team, it is now a decreased debuff durations of all allies by 2 turns. So it's a cleanse, and it also has a chance to inflict speed and restrict. So it's like weird. It's like we went from being a strip move and a single target stun on an AoE attack, which weird, to now being a cleanse as well as like a speed down and a restrict. So kind of like a what's her name? A Cerise S3 that also cleanses. And then they drastically increased the cooldown to 5 turns, but they also apparently increased the damage. I don't really know what to make of this one. This feels like when we talk about characters in a game like Fate Grand Order, I know it's another game. People probably are like, oh, why would you bring that up? A lot of knocks that certain characters have are like when we have a skill and it does 2 things. Like we have a move that gives you invincibility for 1 turn, but it's also like a damage buff. And so it's like, well, if I need the damage buff but not the invincibility, like they're tied to the same skill, that's rough. Why would I ever do that? So now Supreme Spear is like, oh, it's a cleanse. But it's not a support skill. It's also like a debuff skill. Like, so it's, I don't really know. It doesn't work quite like how you would expect Conqueror Lilius's S3 to work, where that's like a buff to your whole team and a neg to the entire enemy team. You don't really get that here. This is like it's a cleanse and also that. So if you don't need the cleanse, but you really want the debuffs, you gotta just kind of throw it out there. So there's just gonna be times where I feel like people are like, man, I really need to hold the cleanse, but like if I don't use Supreme Spear, I don't get any value out of my character. So this is a really like strange change. We also changed his runes. Instead of getting 20% health from the health rune, he now gets 15% from attack from the health rune, that's a weird one. Mineral rune, instead of increasing his defense by 15%, he now gets 10% critical hit chance. Instead of giving hit chance to all allies from the language rune, he now gets increased attack for all allies by 5%. He now gets an increase in damage to Quick Pierce, as opposed to just dealing extra damage to dark units. When he uses Quick Pierce, which I believe is his S1, he now has a chance to recover 5% of the damage dealt, so it has like kind of like lifesteal built in. Increases the effect chance on Supreme Spear, which is his S3. All those chances go up by 20%. So instead of being the 80% here, it's actually 100% chance for a speed down and a restrict. They did buff Cheer, which was the move I was just talking about. Has a 10% chance to extend the increased speed buff duration to 3 turns, which feels honestly really, really low. Doesn't really do anything. They really just don't want to give Cheer anything, it feels like. And then under the freeze rune at the start of the turn, when the caster does not have a debuff, has a 100% chance to increase the attack for 1 turn. So they basically drastically increase the character's damage. Like, we have increased damage multiplier here, 15% attack here, 5% attack here, extra critical hit chance to help with the gearing, so on and so forth. Looking at all this, I literally couldn't tell you what this character actually does. I looked at the notes here, what they actually said they were doing. He's apparently supposed to be an aggressive attacker for Katie's Hunt. I don't get it. I don't see it. So I'm gonna leave this one. I'm gonna just say chalk this one up as like a giant question mark on whether or not he's actually good. And again, I'll leave it to somebody who really specializes in trying to like solve these pieces. Like, again, a content creator like Tristan Wolf, for example, would be much more knowledgeable, I think, about whether or not these buffs are actually good. Because I don't think this does anything, but the notes make me think that it's meant to be seen in a light that I am not equipped to actually look at. So we're going to just move on and talk about the next character, which is Yoon Ryung. And the only thing Yoon Ryung I feel like really needs is a specialty change, because she's a 3-star character, and 3-star characters are borderline irrelevant without a specialty change in this game. They just don't have good stats, and a 5-star will almost always outclass them just purely on the basis of them having much better stats. So they changed Battle Cry, which is, I believe, her S3. It now gives an attack buff and immunity buff for 2 turns, as opposed to a speed buff and an immunity buff for 2 turns. Attack buff is the best attack in the game, or I'm sorry, buff in the game, so that is very, very good. Speed buff is still really good, so I feel like there might be some people that would have preferred to have had the speed buff as opposed to the attack buff, but I would think like 9 times out of 10, attack buff is better in most cases. And it also gained this ability to decrease debuff durations by 1 turn. But the way that the skill is worded, it looks like you get the apply immunity and then you decrease the debuff duration. So like if you have unbuffable, this does nothing. Like, why was this not the first half of the skill? I think that, or at least I'm hoping that this was written wrong, because otherwise, like, what is the point of this buff? Like, this should have been the first thing that happens and then increases attack and immunity for 2 turns. That would have solidified her as a pretty good budget cleanser for new players or just people who really like the character. Yeah, this just feels like a misstep. Like, it feels so sloppy, like how we talk about in other patch videos where they apply specific effects to like only one type of element, and then they'll do the same thing for the same exact effect for a different character, but it doesn't have that restriction. Like, we've gotten to the point where every player has always voiced the fact that this at the end of a skill is awful. You put it at the start so that way you get the immunity after, because otherwise you miss the whole first half of the skill and it's like the character just falls completely flat. Like, what the hell, man? So again, hopefully it's just written wrong, but otherwise that's just a really weird way of doing it. Next up, we have ROL, which is the last character we're going to be talking about. It, again, just like with Yoon Ryung, she really needs a specialty change, and more so than that, this character needs to just stop looking like a really bad version of Fallen Cecilia, because her kit is literally just like bad Fallen Cecilia. So they have increased the damage on her S1 shield thrust, and they have made it so that instead of having a 1 chance to dispel 2 buffs, you now have 2 chances to dispel 1 buff, which is on average better. It's just it doesn't have quite the best case. Like, the best case is still better here, because like if you proc it, cool, you get 2 debuffs. Now if you miss it, you could potentially get 1 buff, but like it's possible you could still miss. So this is a bit of a weird change, but I think I like it. I think it's still fine. Damage dealt increased is nice. Soul burn increases the effect chance to 100%. So you're basically a tank that can self cleanse for 10 souls, which is very, very good. The aptly named Escort was changed to, instead of being a bad version of Fallen Cecilia's S2, it is now essentially just Escort. You just get the Escort buff. In addition, after an ally, except for the caster, suffers a single target attack, increases the combat readiness of the caster by 10%. So yeah, this is a really good change. It gives her an identity and stops making her seem, again, like a Moonlight 5-star that she will always be compared to. So even if she got a specialty change without this change to Escort, she would always be compared to Fallen Cecilia. So now she is a different type of tank, one that we don't actually have currently in the game. I mean, the closest obviously would be Peyra because she's the only other person with escort. But this is a really good change, again, for a 3-star. The final change was on her S3 defensive position. It now has the barrier that was removed from the S2 escort added to it, and you get, obviously, the barrier strength tied to it is going to be attached to this move. So, yeah, this is also a really good change. You also have increased attack and health scaling. I'm sorry, my bad. Decreased attack scaling, increased health scaling, which is obviously going to be very, very nice because it's a tank. You're not building attack on. Overall, these are actually really good changes for ROL. I think ROL is now in the same spot that Phyllis was at before she got her specialty change, where at this point, just give me the specialty change. The kit is good enough. So you can realistically, again, I think expect to see her be a really good light tank if you actually were to give her a specialty change at this point. And that's my hope, that this is actually just a precursor to her actually receiving some kind of specialty change, because this is a character that's been irrelevant for the entirety of the game's life, so that's really good. To round out the video, let's talk about Alencinox's Wrath as well as Double-Edged Decrescent. So Alencinox's Wrath, what it really needed was to be an actual artifact that you would want to play on your warriors instead of just a filler artifact that signals to your opponent, yeah, my gear wasn't good enough to get a 100% crit chance. So they changed it now so that it gives 15% critical hit chance by default to bring it more in line with Rem's artifact, for example. And then also, after activating an extra attack on the caster's turn, increases the combat radius by 10 to 20% based on level. So now your Alencia is going to be zooming if she plays this thing, because you're going to Genesis, you're going to get 50% combat readiness, which is really nice from the buffs that she previously got. And then when she takes her next turn, you get to use Eradicate into Trample, get another 20% combat readiness. She's just, again, going to be zooming, kind of like how DN, everything has combat readiness on it. You're just going to be zooming as a bruiser. So this is really, really nice, especially if you're on like injury plus penetration on Alencia. That obviously loses some speed, but you get some of that speed back in the form of Alencinox's Wrath. Very niche change, but I really like this because previously you'd want to play like Draco Plate on Alencia, but that's a highly contested artifact. Nobody was really using Alencinox's Wrath, so to actually put Alencinox's Wrath on Alencinox and it be actually comparable to some of the best options you could pick, really good change. Double-Edged Decrescent is the last one to talk about here, and I guess the only thing I have written down here is to make it playable, because I don't really know much about this character, because as you can see on your screen now, it is literally the only thief artifact I don't own, and therefore have never played with it. It gives silence previously, and at a really low rate, by the way. So if it was a higher rate, I guess it would be kind of broken. Like if it was like a 100% chance, that would obviously be pretty insane. So they needed to change it. The way they changed it is kind of lazy, but I don't think it's bad. So they gave it 20% evasion to be more in line with like almost every single thief artifact these days. And then after you successfully evade an attack, has a 15 to 30% chance to counter attack. So essentially, if you dodge, you get a counter. It's like having a counter set on for free. So you could potentially play a Speed Arbiter Vildred on Double-Edged Decrescent, and it still function like a degen RB. I don't know if that's good or not, because you lose the attack buff from Moonlight Dreamblade on this thing. So this is not going to be played on Violet, that's for sure. You're not going to play this on Violet because he wants that attack buff. And I don't even know if Remnant Violet wants this, because even though Remnant Violet's Massacre gives attack buff, yeah, sure, you have the counter attack stance, but the damage from Shepherd, I think, makes up for it. Like, you're getting more lifesteal if you're on a lifesteal build, and you're getting more damage on a speed build for, like, that turn 1 burst than this thing. So, if you were to dodge, right, so you have a 1 in 5 chance to actually dodge, right, and then on top of that, you have essentially a 1 in 3 chance to actually counter. So, if you're not somebody like Remnant Violet that has the dodge buff, it's like a 6% chance to actually benefit from Double-Edged Decrescent. Obviously, Rylet is a bit better, so I think he has the best odds of making this work. But, again, I'm not sure I would give up Shepherd for it. it's probably going to end up being still Shepherd, I think, on Rylot, but I could see this being the best option. It's a really interesting artifact to think about because it does open, again, I'll build past like I talked about with Arbiter Vildred. So good change because we literally took an artifact from unplayability to something I would actually consider using and something that might actually spawn a new build on a character. So again, good change pretty much there. So the last thing to round out the video now is to actually talk about the giveaway. For 4,000 subscribers as a milestone, I will be giving away a signed print of Lionheart Sirmia, courtesy of the wonderful Jeremy Lee. She was kind enough to give this to me. To enter to win this signed print of Lionheart Sirmia, all you need to do is be subscribed to my channel and then post your YouTube username in the giveaway channel on my Discord. If you're not already in my Discord, you can find the link in this video's description. On August 1st, I will choose one random person to win this signed print. At that point, I will DM you on Discord. You will have 48 hours to respond to that DM, in which case, if you do, congratulations, the print is yours. I will find a way to actually mail it out to you. If you do not respond within the 48-hour period, then myself as well as my mods will choose another name, and that person will receive a new DM, and they will have 48 hours to respond to that message. And we will keep going until eventually the print finds a home. So best of luck to you all. Hopefully you enjoyed this content and you enjoy most of the content that I am planning to do on this channel. I hope that I can keep doing more giveaways for you guys like this in the future. Have a good weekend. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye now.